Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best junglers for patch 5.15. So first up on my list, I have Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao is definitely one of the stronger Devourer junglers in the game, in my opinion, because he's got early game presence, and therefore, since he can potentially get some kills in the early game, he's going to be able to build that Devourer even quicker than some of the other junglers. He'll be able to build it quicker than someone like a Warwick or a Shyvana, because if he can get a kill in the early game by ganking, which is actually highly likely due to Xin Zhao's pretty strong CC at level 3, then he'll be able to get that item much quicker than someone like a Shyvana or a Warwick will. And just having the early game presence is definitely, you want that in a jungler to carry solo queue, in my opinion, and that's why I have Xin Zhao at the number 5 spot instead of someone like Warwick or Shyvana. He's also got lots of lifesteal, which is really good for just staying really healthy in the jungle. Or he doesn't have lifesteal until he gets a Blade of the Ruined King, but he's got the heal on his W, which just keeps him really healthy in the jungle. He's also got pretty good CC, like I touched on before, with his E, his Q, as well as his ultimate, and he's pretty strong at all stages of the game. He's also a great duelist, especially once he does pick up the Sated Devourer, and he's also got the gap closer on his E, which is just really nice for jumping into the backline on the enemy AD carry in a team fight. And one con to Xin Zhao is that he can get kited when his E is on cooldown. Next up, I have Evelynn. So even though Evelynn did receive a nerf to her Q in patch 5.14, I still think she's a very solid pick for solo queue because she's got a great early game still, and her ultimate actually did get buffed too, so I don't see a reason that you should not continue to pick Evelynn after the small damage nerf to her Q. Her early game is so strong, you could just end up snowballing your lanes really hard and just getting ahead to the point where the Sated Devourer junglers won't even be useful because you'll be able to end the game before they can even basically pick up the item. And she can also flank, which is really good, and if you get ahead with Evelynn, then you definitely want to look to do this. Look to get behind your opponents and then just use your ultimate, and if your team follows up, then you're pretty much guaranteed to pick up a few kills. She's also got that massive shield from her ultimate, which is really nice for just soaking a lot of damage in team fights, and her W removes slows as well, which is really good if you're playing against any champions that do have a lot of slows. Then Evelynn's a pretty good pick against them. She also really only needs the Runeglaive to do a solid amount of damage. I only build Runeglaive on Evelynn, and I find that her damage output is actually quite good. If you do get ahead with Evelynn, then you could build a Luden's Echo, which is, I find myself doing that from time to time if my team's really far ahead and I end up just snowballing all my lanes. But I do think that Runeglaive, that's all you really need for damage, and then just go tanky after that. She's also great if you do get ahead with her, and she counters most of the Sated Devourer junglers because she's got that strong early game, whereas most of the Sated Devourer junglers have a very weak early game. A few cons to Evelynn though is that she does get very low after her first clear, so she can't really do too much after her first clear. She has to go back most of the time, and she also does not have any CC pre-6 and is also quite weak if she does fall behind because she doesn't provide any strong CC. Next up, I have Nidalee. So Nidalee, I think she's a great pick with the Runeglaive, and she's got one of the strongest early games in the game, and therefore I think she's just a great pick because if you know how to play Nidalee and you know how to take advantage of her strong early game, then you can just snowball the early game like Evelynn can, and you can just get your team ahead to the point where if the enemy's got a Sated Devourer jungler, then they're not going to be very useful if you do end up snowballing your lanes. She's got great poke as well, and if you do get ahead with her, you can just start sieging down towers and just start poking the opponents down with her Q. Her heal is also really nice. Once you get a little bit of AP on Nidalee, it starts to heal for quite a bit, and you can just keep your AD carry or whoever's low in teamfights really healthy. She's also got great ganks if you can land her spear, because the follow-up damage she has if she does land her spear is just really good. And she's got the vision with her W as well if the enemies do end up walking over it, so she can go into the enemy's jungle, plant these down wherever she thinks the enemy jungler is going to be walking, and then if they do run over it, she's going to gain vision on them. And she's also got great mobility with her passive and with her W as well, which just allows her to get around the map really quickly. A few cons to Nidalee is that she is pretty squishy, so if you don't have like a tanky top laner or a tanky support, then Nidalee might not be the best pick unless you're really confident on her, because come like mid to late game in team fights, that if you don't have a tank, then the chances of you winning those team fights aren't going to be very good, and she is also pretty skill shot reliant with her Q. Next up I have Kayle. So I definitely did underrate Kayle. I think the last time I did a jungle video, it was for patch 5.13. I only had Kayle on honorable mentions, but after playing her a little bit and seeing some like really good Kayle play, I do think she's like one of the best junglers right now, because she's got an insane mid to late game. Like the damage output that you have with Kayle mid to late is just absolutely crazy. You can just burst someone down and you can pretty much duel like any champion in the game as long as you have a solid amount of items. Her ultimate is just so strong as well. Like come team fights, if you put that on like your AD carry, if he's getting jumped on, then you could just end up saving your AD carry, and your AD carry could end up just dealing a ton of damage after that as well. So it's just such a great ability. She's also got pretty decent ganks because she does have the slow on her Q, and her heal is also really nice. It also grants a speed boost, so it's just nice for staying healthy in the jungle and also for just keeping like your AD carry healthy or yourself healthy in team fights. And she also does have that AoE damage once you do pick up the Runaan's Hurricane, which I would definitely recommend doing. She's got the AoE with her E as well in the jungle, but I would recommend picking up the Runaan's Hurricane because you can deal like a ton of AoE damage in team fights if you do get that item. And a few cons to Kayle is that she is pretty squishy, so like Nidalee, if you don't have a tanky top and you don't have a tanky support, then unless you're quite confident on Kayle, you might not want to pick her. And she is also pretty weak if you do fall behind with her, because she doesn't provide like really any strong CC. So lastly, on the top 5, I have Elise. Elise is like hands down, I think, the best jungler in the game right now, because she's got such a strong early game, and if she can get like good ganks off in the early game, and as long as you can land your cocoon, then the chance of you getting a kill or at least burning the enemy summoner if you do land that cocoon is just very, very high. And she's got so much follow-up damage. She's also an insane tower diver because of her repel, so I just think that Elise is really versatile and she's a great pick right now. She's got really strong clear speeds too, with the you get the attack speed boost whenever you use your W, and then you're also getting health back with your W, which is just really good for staying quite healthy in the jungle. She's also like a great duelist as well. If you can land your cocoon in the early game, follow that up with all of your abilities, then you're pretty much guaranteed to kill whoever you end up landing that cocoon on. She's also like an AP bruiser, so what I like to build on Elise is I like to get the Haunting Guides, I like to get the Sork Boots and the Runeglaive, and then after that, I basically just go full tank on her. And she also like does do a lot of damage with only those damage items. One con to Elise is that she is harder to play. She's got a lot of different combos that she can use, and her cocoon is a skill shot as well. So if you haven't played Elise yet, then play her in normal games before heading into rank to get used to her combos and get used to landing her cocoon, because she's definitely a very rewarding champion, but she is definitely a little bit harder to play in my opinion compared to some of the other junglers in the game. So first up on the honorable mentions, I have Warwick. The reason why Warwick is on honorable mentions instead of the top 5 for this patch is because I've been playing Warwick a little bit lately, and his early game is just so weak that I've been playing against the likes of Nidalee and Evelynn and just the strong early game junglers, and Warwick just does really bad against them. So I don't think that he's the strongest pick, but if the enemy jungler picks a sated jungler, then Warwick can be a pretty good pick. As long as like the enemy jungler doesn't end up like snowballing their lanes in the early game, then at level 6 Warwick can come out and get basically a free kill wherever he uses his ultimate. So as long as Warwick doesn't get punished in the early game, then he is a pretty good pick. Next up I have Shyvana. So Shyvana is also not on the top 5 this patch because she does lack that early game pressure, and like once you do get to mid game though, as Shyvana, she does a ton of damage, especially once you do end up picking up that sated Devour. So basically same goes for Warwick that or same goes for Shyvana that went for Warwick. If you can get past that early game, then she's a really good pick, but she can definitely get punished by these strong early game junglers. Next up I have Rek'Sai. So Rek'Sai is a very strong early game jungler. She's got pretty good ganks in the early game, and she can gank from a lot of places where other junglers can't because of her burrow, or because of her tunnels. So I would definitely recommend playing Rek'Sai as long as you can take advantage of her strong early game, because she does fall off a little bit in the late game, but as long as you can snowball your lanes in the early game, then she is a pretty good pick. Next up, I have Amumu. So Amumu, in my opinion, is probably the best tank jungler in the game right now for solo queue. He's got a really strong team fight with the AoE snare he's got with his ultimate, and his Q is also really nice for just engaging. He also is very versatile, like in his build paths. He can build like AP if he gets really far ahead. He can just like build one AP item and then go full tank after that, or he can just build full tank if he wants to. So he's very versatile in that sense. So if you're looking for a good tank jungler, then Amumu is definitely a very strong choice. Next up on the honorable mentions, I have Jax. So Jax is just a really good sated devour jungler if you can get to that mid to late game as him, and you can end up getting the sated part of the devour because the damage that he has is just really good, and he's also got pretty strong early game ganks because of the gap closer on his Q and because of the stun on his E as well. So I would definitely recommend trying out Jax if you are looking for another strong sated jungler. So to round out the honorable mentions, I have Fizz. Fizz is actually a pretty good Runeglaive jungler, and I haven't seen a lot of him, but he's definitely a pretty good pick with the Runeglaive. His early game ganks actually aren't that bad either because he's got the gap closer on both his Q and his E, and his level 6 ganks are actually really good because he's got that fish at level 6, so he can use that to engage, jump on the opponents with his E and his Q, and as long as his team follows up, then he's pretty much guaranteed like at least the enemy summoners once he does hit level 6. So if you're looking for another pretty strong Runeglaive jungler, then Fizz is a definitely a very viable choice. So that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.